into the pits then. Staying aboard the car.
So that must mean, that certainly must mean, if that's the case, he's got another full stint at least to do.
Fuel going in. The fact that the guys are checking the tyres. Are they checking the tyres? No, Michelin Man not checking the tyres. So does that mean that we'll change them on this particular?
Well, they didn't change them last time on a 42-second stop. So
I don't really see that there's mechanics ready to do that.
No, there's not.
No.
They're ready to go again.
So yeah,
onto a triple then.
Here we go then. Toyota lead Rebellion a 2-3 for the Swiss squad after issues for the 7 car had them stationary for half an hour in the pits. The leader LMP2, United Autosports, ahead of Jota, who have their silver driver in the car right now and losing time to Paul de Resta, with the 3rd place car of Mikael Jensen right now, but being chased down by Cool Racing and by Panis Racing as well. Still very, very open, the LMP2 class, for that perhaps that final podium spot. In GTE Pro at the moment, Alexander Lin leads James Collado by 30 seconds after a front brake caliper and disc change on the Ferrari, with Richard Westbrook for the 95 Aston Martin in 3rd position. And then down at GTM, it's TF Sport ahead of Dempsey Proton and AF Corsa in 3rd position. Big gaps between those 3 at the moment. We have officially 10 retirements, but I think more likely we have 11 retirements, with Iron Lynx not official yet, but haven't come out the pits since smoking a few hours ago. Nice long shadows across the Circuit de la Sarre this morning. A beautiful orange sunrise from the direction of Mulsanne. Everyone's back in place in race control.
Apart from Eduardo.
Oh, it wasn't Eduardo.
No, it wasn't Eduardo.
And the sun is
beautiful.
up.
It's just a few minutes ago, the sunrise. And that was the other question I was going to ask, which was that blinding sunrise. Another feature here at Le Mans.
Pit stop car 95 under investigation.
Ooh.
That's the 3rd place Aston Martin.
Troubles, by the way, for some of the LMP2 runners. They're not the leading cars, but just to run through. Nielsen Racing, damaged suspension on the curb. They've
also had a plethora of penalties.
Yeah, but this is their first mechanical issue of the race. Dragon Speed engine worries, and not for the first time. They were saying just a few minutes ago.
Well, remember that Juan Pablo Montoya's car, the 21 machine, retired with engine issues.
This is the 27 car, changing coils, lambda sensors, airbox. So that car, the 27 car, now back out of the pits. Got the number 1 Rebellion on pit road at the moment. So that's 2 already delayed LMP2 efforts, further delays.
That was a replay of Graf Racing, Vincent Capillier going ahead of Alexandre Coigny in the Cool Racing car. That's for 5th position right now in LMP2 as we ride on board with our race leader. Sebastian Buemi in the 8 machine. Early doors with a puncture and a brake caliper issue, a brake ducting issue as well on the right front. But that was nothing in comparison to the maladies of the 7 car, which stays stationary for half an hour with a turbo issue, a turbo change. And that is why that 7 car is now in 4th position. And I was wondering when I sat down 4 hours ago whether they would still have a chance of getting on the podium, but the gap, I think, is just too large.
It's too large. It's they're still 2 laps back from the 3rd place car. I will admit to a little bit of being a little perplexed as to why you're not allowed to change an engine, but you are allowed to change the turbo.
Because the turbo is not the central housing of the engine, it's an appendage.
Yeah, but it provides the performance.
Yeah, so does a fuel pump.
No.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they define the hard structural casings as your thing that you can't change. The chassis, the engine, the gearbox. It's a historic thing. Yeah,
Yes.
turbos were added to those parts. I think it's related to that. Now, the chances are as well, you'd see a lot more cars out due to, if that was the case.
I'm not asking for
And
it. I mean,
you would have a lot of retirements, because then you could go, right, well, you can't change anything at all, apart from, you know, because there'd be no consumable items in a way. Or you had to have a list of consumable items. I think it's actually not a bad thing, because it creates the potential to develop something that is a little bit of genius, like the variable turbine geometry technology turbos that we had, which were far more efficient, better response, everything else. But you obviously have got the problem that if you introduce performance in a way, you've got a potential of reliability, and this race is won by performance and reliability. And if it doesn't work, then clearly you don't. If you had it fixed, then you would go very much on the safe side, and you wouldn't get the development of technology.
But we hope, don't we don't ever lose that from endurance racing, that it's here as a kind of testing ground. I mean, the number of times, well, I remember every year almost in the Audi days, Alan, there would be some innovation or other, whether or not it was mechanical, electrical, lighting systems, and that was part of the joy of it. That was part of what made this special into the modern era. I mean, yeah, we could go back and talk about, you know, disc brakes. We could go back and talk about windscreen wipers and all that kind of stuff. We're way beyond that point, but in an era where a lot is spec, I hope we don't lose that.
Well, you do get a balance here at the moment, because we've got LMP2 seeing Paul di Resta, United Autosports. It's a spec car, effectively, and it's a team and the drivers that can make the subtle differences that can win or lose. Then you look at LMP1, which is the top category, faster car, but the rules are wider and more open. It's not completely open, but a bit of discussion there.
Is that a nose ready?
It's a nose definitely ready, and there's the discussion that was Justin Taylor, who had pulled his headset to the side to listen. He is their chief engineer, was actually race engineer with us. He was my data engineer for a long, long time in America. And JT obviously will make a call on which way they go with that nose change for that particular car. But coming back to it, then I think there is that balance where you're allowed to develop technology. GTE Pro, again, you can go even further. And with that respect, I think it does allow a lot of things that are road relevant as well as actually development relevant.
Francesco Castellacci, it is there, and that is Thomas Fleur, the gentleman driver of the 54 car. There'll be all sorts of mini dramas emerging in garages now.
Yeah, so many of those stories never reach us in the commentary booth or in any of the media, really, because they're just constantly managing things.
Well, there you go. I mean, we're now in that phase of the race where what do we still need to do? What do we have to do? What can we achieve with pace? What can we achieve with strategy? Ross gone there, and is that Paul Dell'Anna?
Well,
is Augusta in the car?
Yes, who's in the car?
Sorry, in which case that was Paul.
Yeah, the question mark for us is, do Aston Martin need to do a caliper and disc change on that car? We've seen the Ferrari doing it, so is it now time for the Aston to do it? Because at the moment they have a gap of 30 seconds. We've had those guys locked together, and it was 30 seconds that it took to do that extra part of the stop for the Ferrari, so it would very much put them back on the same bit of racetrack. But maybe having that separation will help one or the other. Well, it certainly will help one or the other, because they won't be coming up on traffic at the same time. This is the 60Q car of Johnny Molam now aboard the Red River Sport, that's looking rather tired. Bruno Senna's on the radio. Is it the nose that he needs?
There is a small gap between the nose and monocoque, but it's attached perfectly. Everything seems correct. Well, everything seems correct. Let us know if you feel anything.
A gap between the door and the monocoque. I think on the left-hand side, by the looks of things. And that's part of the discussion. So the nose actually is insignificant, I think.
Maybe they're just looking at...
They're just posing on it.
Yeah.
It depends. If you've got the car in the garage and you've got a loss of downforce, you would stick on a nose as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the nose does get worn and the downforce drops off from it.
We talked a lot about the number 50 car, the all-female crewed LMP2 car, the 85 car it is here, the Iron Lynx car, running 9th, just coming down pit road in the hands of Manuel Agosna. This is the second year at Le Mans for that Iron Lynx crew, albeit this year supported by AF Corsa, last year by Kessel Racing. Some strong performances in the LMS. Looked to me to be on for a race win at Paul Ricard last time out. Safety car took that away from them, unfortunately. But from the lower end of the top 10, and Hart fought that is, to the lead car, Sally Yolek, into his second stint, I think, this morning now. And still ahead, by the way, at the moment, of the 5th place GTE Pro car, which is the car, I think, just behind him, isn't it? Is this the... this is a... Yes, it's a class... It's not a class battle. It's a positional battle for 26th place overall. So the car behind him on the road is the 82 car in the hands of Jules Gounon at the moment.
Presume he won't be too concerned by losing a spot to a different classed car.
He should be rather more concerned about his overall pace, his consistency. The 54 car, that will be Thomas Fleur aboard the rubber spattered 54 car.
Yeah, Fisichella got out of that car from 11th position in GTM, but it's taking a while to get everything ready inside the cockpit of that car. Perhaps an issue?
Yeah. 88 car.
Last of our runners, Dominic Bastien, just bringing that car into the pits.
This is the grand old man of the Le Mans 24 Hours.
Hasn't yet overtaken and may not overtake Rino Mastronardi in the stationary Iron Lynx Ferrari that we saw smoking a few hours ago. There's still, what is that, 50 laps.
He won't.
Can't do 50 laps in 5 hours?
It's not 50, is it? It's 8. Oh, hang on.
No, 51.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at 50. You're right, it's 51. I thought it was 81. So 50 laps at
just
about 4 minutes a lap.
With my maths, it's just about will get ahead. Out on the track, Thomas Fleur then, after a slight stuttery pit stop.
So just coming back to one thing I've just looked at in the penalty notices from earlier on, that it was actually Tony Verlander in the WeatherTech car that got the penalty for the collision with Nick de Vries.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay.
He was deemed to be at fault. 30-second stop and go and a withdrawal of 2 penalty points. So they've put 2 penalty points onto his license as well.
So to remind anybody that I didn't see it, but it's been described to me, that was 2 LMP2 cars going up the inside Tête Rouge?
It was coming through the S's and into Tête Rouge. So if we follow the Porsche at the moment, came through here, down the hill, and then one LMP2 went through and Nick tried to follow and Vilander had to turn in at one point. The 2 collided. The vision I saw was one view of it, and it was a frontal view, so you didn't really see the sort of depth side of things, but it was difficult to call. You could argue on both ways, but I'm a little bit surprised that Tony delivered the complete blame for it.
A more racing incident, you feel, maybe?
Yeah, but again, we only had a frontal view, which doesn't really show you how far alongside and when Nick was when the collision actually happened.
Some years ago, had the opportunity to pop into not just race control, but also the steward's room to look at the kit they use to determine these matters, and I will admit to being massively surprised and impressed at the GPS-based kit they've got.
Yeah.
And how precise they can be about just exactly where every car was in those incidents and what they did.
Yeah, it's very frustrating if you have to go there.
Poulut Chatin's got good pace in the IDEX Sport car right now. That is not a pass for position, but it is him unlapping himself from the Cool Racing machine. Last time through, we did a 3:29. It's the car's fastest lap of the race. And great to see him up in 8th position now. Some slow-mo of the number 3 with Nat Bertrand aboard that car.
been a quiet race for them, hasn't it?
Here is the number 1. Let's see if that slow-mo has that door
on the left
open. No, you can't see it on that.
No.
These slow-mos can be taken at any point. So
there's been a few issues with doors this year,
yeah.
more than expected, actually. You can see the tyre oscillating side to side there coming over the curb. Those curbs you feel is just a rip. It's like a small rumble in the car. You don't feel it kicking you out or bouncing at anything, but you can just see how much the tyre is part of the suspension of the car, as well as actually putting the grip through and allowing you to turn.
yes, it looks so much worse, doesn't it, when you slow it down and put it into super slow-mo. It looks so much more vicious than actually the feeling you get at the speed in which you are doing.
We'll come back at some point about the steward's room. We'll get a moment to talk about that. And stocking up some bits and pieces. There's a tired-looking Giancarlo Fisichella. I mean, put in the run into daylight. They're tired eyes, aren't they?
Yep, it's been a long day so far. 18 hours and 15 minutes have passed. This 24-hour race. So there's still nigh on near the WEC race still to go. 6 hours to run. A lot to play for. A lot of problems can happen in that time. But the teams will be thinking they've got broken the back of it. There's no question they have. However, they'll be running on, I would have said, they're at quarter energy and some running on reserves.
Yep. Let's run through again for anybody joining us this morning. The cars that are no longer taking a part in proceedings. Euro International out early on with drive problems at the Dunlop Bridge. Spirit of Race, Matt Griffin coming in to retire the car after the team had worked to repair the damage from a spin and subsequent puncture and second delamination on that car after a clash deemed a racing incident with the 22 United Autosports car, while Duncan Cameron was in the car, 55 out. 52, AF Corsa, Alexander West having a nasty whipping spin into the barriers at the Porsche curves. Car out in the spot there. High Class Racing giving up the fight after multiple efforts to solve their gearbox woes. Black and white flag, meanwhile, for Andreas Lascaratas in the that's the car 89, abusing track limits. High Class Racing, multiple attempts to fix the gearbox after a fine early race run. By Collis, lost the rear wing down the Forest S's, and then subsequent further body damage when Bruno Spengler, on his way back to the pits, also brushed the barrier. Duquesne, Chris Trongomondy, hard impact into the barriers at the first chicane after a three-wide battle went wrong. We've got the number 1 car in. Do you see that gap? It's not terribly flush, but I wouldn't have thought that was a major problem. Is that the gap we're talking about, the door line?
I thought it was, but looking at it, it doesn't look too bad. It is going to go into the garage, though, for second position.
No, I think it's not that. I think it's ahead of the door, and I think it may be that nose section.
Bruno getting out the car. The car is going up on its big jacks.
It's not going to be too long just because the other drivers got straight back in again.
Right, so they've got 4 minutes ahead of Nat Berton at the moment.
I think the question for them a little bit is obviously their sister car, but also where the next Toyota is after that.
Yeah, next Toyota is 3 laps.
Because you don't want to be getting into the point where you're having more and more problems because you're eroding into that. So clearly at this stop, if they can, they should try to do as much as they can so that they secure a little bit more comfort for the rest of the race, that they're not going to have any additional potential stops.
So the meeting the Brains Trust was certainly looking at what the workshopping the problem before they had to come and deal with it hands-on.
And as you say, it does look like it is
it's bodywork fit, isn't it?
The fitting between the nose and the monocoque, which we talked about a lot in practice, why they kept swapping the nose, and they do it to make sure it fits properly, and this one doesn't seem to.
Yeah.
Well, there's fitting, there's also performance. There's performance of the lights at different times. but clearly it's not correct. And the issue is that if it's actually...
I don't think they can get it off.
Well, there's the 60 that stopped at Dunlop chicane, and that looks like a spin, and trying to refire again. Schiavone came in a little bit hot, wide, looked it round. Nicely done. Select first, go.
Parked it neatly.
And he's stuck though. Oh, why is he not moving?
That's what happens when you get offline. Suddenly, you could see how there was suddenly no grip, and the rear swapped around.
You can see some trudge marks from an earlier incident in the other gravel trap in front of us. So someone trudged away from the scene of the crime.
Runner-up position at the Le Mans 24 Hours, slipping away for the #1 Rebellion. Oh, and a very
89.
That's the 80. Yes, big issue with the front right.
Absolutely ripped the front end of the car off, and I'm sure there's going to be debris around the circuit from that.
This is Andreas Lanskeratos. You mentioned he had an incident. That's what the incident is. Oh dear. Now that is, well, modular bodywork, remember, on these things. So it might not be quite as bad as it looks, but there's a lot flailing. Here we go.
Right.
Now they've got the bodywork. I think they couldn't get it off, could they?
Yeah, but then it worries me that actually it's a fixation in the monocoque that they've got the problem with, not in the nose. And if it's a monocoque issue, then that's going to be a little bit harder to solve.
And now they're attacking that particular problem. Debris at Marshall point 3, so that's suggesting that happened at the start of the lap.
Well, there's a 54.
No,
that's where it went in the Porsche curves. Oh,
right
dear
front
me.
tyre failure. How many stints did that have?
Oosh. Luckily, most of the initial degradation happened off track, so all the bits of bodywork and stuff, for the most part, off racing line and off racing circuit.
Double stint. So normally a right front failure like that, you would expect it's failing at the highest point, highest speed, and it's been a lock-up and the treads came off.
Yeah, it's more of a delamination, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not. It's the bonding, and that's normally done because if there's been a big lock-up and then it actually detaches that part of the tread and then it comes off itself.
We'd seen a message he'd been off the circuit somewhere, so... And it's going to be a slow zone, I think, for clear-up, both for that site and for debris at Dunlop as well, where Schiavone's had his moment.
Yeah, so slow zone in the Porsche curves. And now the new nose going on. Is it fitting correctly? This is the acid test. That bolt seemed to work pretty well. That was the one they were concerned about.
Matt Berton, by the way, is in the pit, so it's now it's a lap now. It is exactly a lap.
It's not big. It's
plus or minus what happens here.
But whilst it's fitted on, there doesn't seem to be a rush to get him out. There's something. Oh, it has got tyres on.
Tyres.
Right.
The tyres you want to bring from the oven and do it inside the garage. Then you'll come out. I think they refueled before they went in.
There are the shards that need to be tidied up, as you say.
A nasty moment.
It'd have been a much nastier moment 3 years ago when the wall was there.
Yes, wouldn't it just? That's weird. It goes quieter here with the slow zone. I'll finish off that run through, by the way, the retirements and major incidents. Next up was G-Drive. We're talking about Tristan Gomondy backwards into the wall, big impact. Tristan fine after cars went 3 wide into the first chicane. Another incident deemed a racing incident there. 30 out on the spot. 16 G-Drive racing by Algarve car.
Now, what's going on there? The Rebellion came out the pits and overtook 3 or 4 cars.
The slow zone's gone at turn 1. It's only at the Porsche.
Ah, right, okay.
Just straight back into it.
Because everyone was going very slowly, having not quite got up to speed yet. Now he's being a bit more patient with the Project One win Porsche.
Yep.
And the gap 42 seconds between our 2 Rebellion cars, with 3 now ahead of 1.
And Gus Menezes at the wheel of the #1 car. Keep an eye on this, and I'll finish that run through. So the G-Drive by Algarve 16 car. Fuel pickup problems they had, fuel collector we thought early on, and electronic problems, I think, finally finished it for them, Alan. The 16 car, the Ryan Cullen car.
Yes, it was electronic issues that stopped them in the middle of the night.
MR Racing, the 70 car. Kei Cozzolino suffering suspension, front left suspension issues, and that's finally ending their day. And we saw that car, I think, in a place of safety down near Dunlop.
Oh, and then somebody's running wide there at Arnage. Apologies.
It's Panis Racing. That is Julian Canal still aboard that car.
Yeah, and that's handed Mikkel Jensen the advantage and put him ahead, as you can see on track. So into P3 for G-Drive.
We talked a little earlier this morning about Tony Verlander's exit for the race with that clash with Nick de Vries, Tête Rouge.
And then into the slow zone. This is how the pass happened. And it was just a lock-up, run a little bit deep into Arnage, just about kept it out the gravel, but handed the position easily to Mikkel Jensen and G-Drive Racing.
I think it was actually Jensen just moving around, distracted him. There's a small bump there, and if you don't get off the brake pedal at that point, just coming off, it's just tiny little release of the brake pressure, then you can easily lock up. It's a horrible corner, Arnage, for that, actually.
Yeah. And last two, in terms of the definite retirements, are the number 21 Dragon Speed USA car, when Pablo Montoya stopping out on track after electrical and engine problems with that car, and then the 37 Jackie Chan DC racing car, Ho Pin Tung at the wheel when that car was retired, but it was Will Stevens that stopped at the side of the road, and that car disqualified after receiving external assistance, a component handed to the driver, we are told. We're not sure what that component was.
It's not official that the Iron Lynx 75 is retired.
But that did come in with what we think was a fire in the engine bay. And that car has been stationary for a significant period of time. That completes the cars that we think either definitely are or may be in terminal trouble. Leads on to another discussion point, which we'll come to in a moment or two. Which I'm going to give him pre-warning for, which is, Alan was mentioned, we're talking about the kit and caboodle as the 8 car comes in from the lead in the steward's office. Alan, as a man who's had extensive experience of appearing before the stewards, what's it like in those meetings? Genuinely, what is it like? We have this kind of flippant line that I use quite often, which is it's a meeting without coffee and biscuits. Just exactly what is it like when you're called before the stewards or the race director?
Well, it depends what it's for.
Yeah.
For one thing, and it very much depends on how you approach it as a competitor, whether that's a driver or a team principal, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they are effectively handing down the rules and regulations that are written by the FIA.
Yep.
They're not making them up. They're not flexing them left or right or up or down. They're just handing them down. And they're trying to make a judgment. Now, I think like referees and everything else, they're doing their level best, and they're there because they're passionate fans of the sport as much as anything else. It's not because they're paid to be there. So I think if you go in with that in mind, then it's a little bit easier than if you go in slamming doors, hitting tables and telling them that they're idiots, which I must be honest that I have done once in my career.
You've tried both.
And that one didn't work. That one was not the cleverest thing that I ever did, and it was one thing I learned very, very quickly. Yeah, what you do is you go down and you sit. They explain as the 35 stopped at Dunlop again. It's another spinner, looks like, on the way into Dunlop. Yamanaka. He's going to have to get a bit of throttle on there to turn it around. And you, as you see, just comes in, just runs a little bit wide, gets onto, well, it runs very, very wide. There he tried to turn. Again, in these situations, just go straight, even if you have to cross the edge of the gravel trap, just go straight, straight, straight. And that doesn't happen. And you survive a little bit better than you did doing that. So you go in, they tell you what you did wrong, or what they think you did wrong. You explain your case, if you have a case. And if you don't, the best thing is you just accept it, put it to bed, forget about it, and move on. Because you've still got 6 hours to go. And ultimately, if it's a technical case, then it usually gets resolved after the event. If it's a sporting case, then it can be resolved during the event itself.
There you go. So when we, as we often do, talk about team managers being called to race control or to see the stewards, that's what it's like. And can I confirm there is neither coffee nor biscuits in the room?
In one of my other roles as team principals, we did go to the stewards quite often in one season. and I brought my own coffee capsules for the coffee machine and gave it to them at the beginning of each race, just in case I had to come and visit.
Brilliant.
But this is a very important factor, actually. Yeah. The stewards, and in this championship, they are a consistent group of stewards that follow the championship. So they understand, like Eduardo Freitas, they understand the nature of the racing, they understand the characters of it, they understand the sort of positions that you get into, and they also try within the rules that are set that they have to put through, they try to look at it as most objectively as possible. I know it's very easy sitting at home, especially and also in a garage, if you've got a lot of passion about it, that you've got a clear view. Was it my fault? Was the other person's fault? Was this? Was that? No questions. I didn't gain anything out of it. But ultimately, my sort of overall view is that they're actually pretty level, fair, objective, and they're not biased.
And consistent. I think
consistency is a big thing. You can always argue about that, and we always want more consistency, but this is one very important point. What you said there was, with the technology they have, allows them to be more consistent.
Yes.
And that's something that I think we all will agree, that they have introduced technology for the benefit of consistency and also of clarity.
Yeah.
You notice it's very clear when a penalty is handed down why the penalty is handed down. It's not just penalty, car number duh. It is actually with the reasoning behind it, which I think is a lot better. If you know why you're getting penalised for something, you can accept it.
Priceless experience from Alan McNish, Graham Goodwin.
Sorry, it wasn't priceless. I had to pay for that experience. It certainly wasn't priceless.
And he's charging for it as well, so you get your card out. Let's hear from the Alpine of Pierre Rag. This car currently 6th in LMP2.
That's
don't worry about Capillet.
6 seconds ahead.
Coming into the pits, he says.
Yep, he's 6 seconds ahead of you.
And we were just watching a battle shaping up in the AM class between JMW, Jan Magnussen in the yellow Ferrari, chasing down Com Ledigar in the Lusic Racing 61 car that started from pole position. That's a battle for 7th in the AM class. And that battle 3.7 seconds apart.
And that's a position that's way further up than those two cars have been for a little wee while. So they're benefiting from the errors and lack of consistency and problems for others. Good morning, Jim at Werther at JMW. I know, watching from home with the family, and wish you were here, Jim. That's the 88 car, our final runner at the moment on
and our
track.
First retirement, not retirement, retirement, not retirement.
Absolutely, Don Bastian back at the wheel of that car. But excellent stuff there, by the way, from Alan McNish. I can't ever remember ever having had a conversation in a booth about that, and thank you for it.
I can't remember him having told so many barefaced lies without even a slight smirk either. That's quite remarkable.
Go to the stewards room, you'll ask them.
Touche.
I've been in there. He's got his own chair and everything.
I can't tell you on air. There's a few very, very good stories in the stewards room, but they're certainly not for broadcast. But at the end of it, you know, it's part of the makeup of the whole event. Without it, can you imagine if we didn't have them?
No, absolutely. And you know, at the end of the day, it's
be the Wild West.
Anything behind a closed door is open to being misconstrued and misunderstood, isn't it? And
I see what you did there.
The reality is that why would it be anything other than fair and consistent?
Well, you need it to be, don't you? And the stewards do as much as anything else, although the Formula One stewards now are really completely hamstrung by teams insisting that it is the letter of the law at all times and there should be no interpretation, and then they complain that the letter of the law is imposed and it ruins a good race. Well, you know, don't wish too devoutly for what you want.
24,
going out,
24 was coming
24
out.
coming out of the garage. Yeah, what's that been in for? Let's update the viewers. Me. Why was the 24 Nielsen car in the garage?
It's the first time they've had a mechanical issue. It seems to be a suspension problem from curb strike, and that's they've had all sorts of other penalties. This is their first time here, their first time in LMP2. So they've had all sorts of other stumbles, and they're finally looking to find pace, but that's their first mechanical issue, and it was rear suspension after a curb strike for the Nielsen Racing team. So they'll be, at this point, as debutants in this hotly contested LMP2 class, they'll be eyeing 5 hours, 25 minutes and change to the end of this race, and they'll celebrate that if they can make it.
3/4 of the race done then, heading into the final car crippling 5.5 hours. Graf Racing being caught hard and fast by the Signitech car, and aboard that dark blue 36 Signitech car, Pierre Rag chasing down Vincent Capillière. This is for 5th place in LMP2, and that is for 9th place overall, with just 4 LMP1 cars remaining. Toyota's number 8 car leading the field, Rebellion 1 and 3 in reverse order now, 3 ahead of 1, so I'll catch up with that in a minute. And in 4th place, the number 7 Toyota that led for the first 12 hours of the race, all but before a turbo change. And Alan chasing down through into the beginning of the Porsche curves around the outside of the Mentos AM class Porsche. Lost a little bit of ground.
Yeah, a little bit of ground, but he lost the minimum of ground because he was able to let it flow around the outside there. Thing is, if you sort of get blocked and you have to accelerate, then you lose that momentum. So it's not ideal, but he's sort of still fighting in there as they come past the karting circuit on the right-hand side and then down into the heavy braking at the Ford chicane. And in front of us, the little boxes on the right, as they say, if they wave, but unfortunately they didn't. They're a bit busy looking left and right, coming across the start and finish line and accelerating up towards Dunlop. Black and white flag for driver Johnny Mollum in the Red River Sport 62 for abusing track limits. So that's the first track limits warning I've seen for a little while.
Well, actually,
it's got light.
It's a crazy shocking one because it's abusing no G track limits.
Ooh.
Yeah.
He's abusing, sorry?
Abusing no G track limits.
An emerging story maybe. 95 Aston Martin did a brake change at that last stop. Now, just asked the question and waiting for the answer, but I know we've not had a brake change and confirmed now by Salmon Strang at AMR for the 97 yet.
No, we haven't. 97 is leading as we've got a bit of a battle going on down towards the first chicane. Not sure he'll be able to get it done unless it's into the braking area. However, saying that, you've got Alex Lynn, who's actually pulled out about 10 seconds on that new tyre from James Collado at the moment. So building a gap. And if they're going to do it, they still want to keep track position when they come back out again. So it'd be a good time to actually take that advantage if they need to do it. However, I'm sure they're trying to pace it as late as possible to do the brake change in the most optimum time possible.
And do we think that Collado has had a brake change in the air?
Yes, we know he's definitely had that. Yeah, we saw that.
So
yes.
Despite that, he's actually still right in there with the 97 car, and those two have been battling for probably 6 hours plus together.
It was effectively nose to tail when they came in, and you know, they've always been around about that 2-3 seconds, depending on the strategy. As the 34s looked it around and into the gravel. Please, 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 no, keep going, keep going, Sebastian Loeb.
Go on,
yeah, that's it. Keep going.
Keep
And
your
he's
foot
stuck.
buried. No, he's slowed down too much. He comes in too hot, loops it around. All good so far. So where does it go so horribly wrong for him?
He turns right, not left.
I think he's just out the pits, isn't he? It's not very long into a stint on this. He's been in the pits for a long time.
not actually his outlap, but maybe relatively
what was
recently
his, what
out.
number?
34. It's been a troubled night for the Inter-Europol team.
2 laps. René Binders just jumped out. He's jumped in 2 laps ago.
Okay, so again, this battle for 5th in LMP2, Vincent Capillière. We heard on the radio messages that he was due to box in a couple of laps, so Capillière should be due in relatively soon. They go by the Algarve Pro car. And how far down the order is that? Why am I not seeing it? Oh, in fact, it's John Falp, and he's only a couple of spots behind them, but a lap behind them now. This is going to turn into a fairly long slow zone while they get the Manitou in. It's not that far away from Terra Firma, is he? He really almost made it. Know that feeling. So preparing for a slow zone at 9:09.
15
Beatles fans, it's not the one after 9:09, it's the one at 9:09.
10,
97
9,
didn't
8,
take
7,
breaks on that
6,
last stop.
5, 4, 3, 2,
Just
1.
for information,
Slow
now
zone
Alex
1.
Lynn is
Slow
on his outlap.
zone
James
1.
Collado back into the lead.
Hopefully you heard the race director. Sadly, it didn't make it through to us. Kamui Kobayashi has been through the pits in the Toyota Gazoo Racing number 7 car. And that car Still 6 laps off the lead, but 1 lap closer to the number 1 Rebellion. Okay, so what happened to the number 1 Rebellion? I left it safely in 2nd place when I went to bed for 3 hours, and it is now in 3rd place. Hands up.
The car had ill-fitting bodywork, by the sound of things, reported by Bruno Senna. Came in not really clear. They changed the nose, but struggled to do that. So we're not sure yet whether or not it was the fixing on the bodywork or the fixing in the monocoque. But either way, that took some time. So there was some concern about that.
I think it would. Bruno Senna would feel it by maybe the front of the car touching the ground and porpoising a little bit. And then one thing was then to change the nose clearly, but at the same time, getting it off proved a bigger problem than what they anticipated by the looks of things.
So that swapped the positions for those 2 cars.
Fragrant Fiona Miller pointing out that 3 of our 6 stewards won't be in the stewards room this weekend, at least not real life. They're working remotely from remote locations. I was going to say home, but that pre-assumes they're working from home. They may not be.
Yeah, but that's one of the things I think we're going to find out of 2021, shall we put it that way, that we will find that people are doing more remote because the technology is definitely allowing it.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't really affect too much, because if you don't have the visual, or if you do, I know that we did our last race and all stewards meetings were by Zoom conference.
Okay.
And so it worked perfectly well.
Yeah.
It's just a
Except
little...
the coffee wasn't as good.
Yeah, it's just a little less hard to be sort of as contrite or as winning. We talked about this a little bit earlier, didn't we? You know, with drivers coming through and learning how to deal.
We removed the slow zone 1 in less than 1 minute.
Okay.
9-12 will remove the slow zone 1.
That is our race director. So Eduardo's not in the chair at the moment. It's race director B.
Yeah, it's not Rui Marquez, is it? It didn't look like Rui.
Yeah, but this is going to be interesting in the GTE Pro battle, because the 51 is coming up to that slow zone now. But now after the 97 is pitted, I think he'll be clear. So I think the 51 will actually get caught by the end of the slow zone, whereas the 97 probably will be fine to go through. 20 seconds. And I think the 51's already in it. Settler into the pits.
Yeah.
Rear tail change. Looks like it's a bit loose or not connected as well.
Unless that's a new one going on to replace the Modesty panels at the back there. Tell me what happened to United. 3 of the top 4 cars, United, Autosports, G-Drive and Panis, have all been into the pits. Jota hasn't yet. Again, when I went to bed at 5 o'clock, United were 1-2, 32 ahead of 22. 22 remains in the lead of the class. What happened to 32?
Well, Jan Vernutet was aboard the car and it was not able to put in full runs. Felipe Albuquerque complaining that in following the 32 in that phase of the race, absolutely plastered windscreen with oil coming from the 32 car. That process carried on with Vernutet following Phil Hansen and catching him remarkably, to the point where there was a radio message from Phil, a little rattled by the pace of the young Dutchman, 329s at that point. But, Alan?
No, sorry, continue.
But the car then called in, the 32, and a fairly lengthy repair job for a fractured fixed oil line.
I said to you that I thought the 51 leading AF Corsa car was going to get caught up in the end of that slow zone at the first corner, and the 97 following Aston Martin of Alex Lynn would not. Well, actually, that was the case, and Lynn was 16 seconds faster through that first sector, just purely because of their positioning on the circuit. That you can't predict. That I wouldn't say is great strategy. That's just the good fortune. Yeah. It's like a penalty kick. It kind of goes with you sometimes, goes against you in others.
It's like the bounce of the rugby ball. Sometimes it's with you, sometimes it's not. And you know, when it's your race and you're going to win it, and fate has decreed that, then more often than not it'll bounce your way. And when it's not, more often than not, it won't. Into the pits comes Cinetic Alpine. So maybe it was, I misunderstood the, misunderstand the Englishes when they're in, the messages when they're in English, they're hard enough to hear. Misunderstood that in French. So he was due to come in 2 laps. So Pierre Rag is out.
Andre de Grau gets in.
Yeah. They have driven the wheels off this car. Early delay, and they're coming right back in it, and they have still not given up on the possibility of a podium.
Absolutely, and that was a fight to that pit stop with the So 24 Graf car, 36 and 39. It's the rhythm of that kind of 3rd through 6th and 7th. That's going to be, I think, one of the battles we're going to see in the closing stages of this race. And in particular because we've had this quite astonishing lack of ultimate reliability in LMP2. It's not something I'm used to seeing at all in any of this competition with these 2017 and onwards cars.
Well, that and the carnage in the GT classes, in GT Pro and in GTM. It's been a really hard race. Yeah, it has really been hard. So many cars have just gone whoomph, you know, and found a trapdoor and just dropped down the order. Jan Magnussen continues to close on Comlediga. Well, here's a classic example. That Lutzig Racing Ferrari, that was the fastest AM car of all in Hyperpole. That's our pole sitter, and he's creeping his way back up inside the top 10.
That's a moment for the number 60 car. That's one of the trio of, and also the number 88 car following through. What if that was just bailing out of the breaking point for the two P2 cars coming through?
Now, there's no need to follow Claudio Schiavone in everything he does. that leads you in all sorts of wrong ways. Dominic Bastian, maybe not to know that, but the 74-year-old driver of the 88 car following the Italian down the escape road. A little replay there. Don't worry, he hasn't done it again, team. Cara de Flaming will be, like the rest of the team, I think, into Europol, quite happy when this one ends.
So that's who's in the 61 car at the moment. Is that Comlediga? It is Comlediga.
It is Comlediga. So this is a good battle. Young Comlediga, recently a very experienced Porsche exponent. He also runs his own Porsche Super Cup team. They were racing here yesterday morning.
Race prototypes as well. Raced for Spirit of Race in single season of Asian Le Mans with Alexander West, who was ridden one of the other AM cars 2 years ago, the older spec LMP2 cars. And following him, well, two Le Mans traditions, JMW Motorsport and Jan Magnussen.
Yes, Jan Magnussen in the yellow and black car, so contractually we think that's allowed.
And
I was going to say there was something stops at the side of the road, and it's this 72 Ferrari, and this is the Hub Auto Racing car of Maurice Chen.
It is, and he's got that marker board jammed.
That's not a marker board, that is genuinely
Do not go backwards. And no,
don't do that.
No. Now it's going to dig its way in. 3, 2, gently. There we go. He was golden until he decided to turn around off the track.
Yeah, what's Chinese for damn?
That.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so another slow zone area.
Same area, right at the Dunlop Bridge. More and more drivers fatigued, more and more tyres fatigued, more and more brakes fatigued, more and more looping round into the gravel trap, and more Le Mans winners in the booth as we are joined by Emanuele Pirro, who has jumped in with the camera crew to surprise Alan McNish. And it is a surprise because Pirro was supposed to come in last night, but decided that he'd sneak off to bed first. So, Emanuele Pirro chatting the chat with Alan McNish. Emanuele, of course, is our Grand Marshal for the race. So, heading towards 5 hours remaining, and just getting through the first chicane and over the hill is stretching some of our competitors. See the Manitou getting ready to go. They're waiting for the yellow zone to start.
Absolutely.
And that will happen in a couple of moments. Which takes a little bit before they impose it. They don't impose that slow zone before they are ready to spring into action. I tell you what, the Marshals teams there at the Dunlop chicane, they've been doing a lot of springing, haven't they? I mean, right from lap 2, was it, when the 88 car was sent up the escape road there? It's been a long time. And actually, just to go back to the retirement or the disqualification of 37, the Jackie Chan DC racing car, it was Gabriel Aubrey at the wheel who was fixing the car for a long while. He got on the phone to the team, and they were disqualified because a team member came out not to talk to him, well, not just to talk to him, but handed him an item to allow the car to be returned to the pits. And having done that, they knew they would be excluded. Slightly surprising to me then that they actually put the car back out on track to wait to be excluded. there we go. I mean,
So first time in, well, quarter of a century that's happened. 94.
is that right? You've done some research.
That was
haven't you?
Dr. Jallisvinfen helped us, as he often does. Callaway Corvette.
Wow, in its one and only appearance at Le Mans.
Oh no, I think they raced through to 96, the Callaways.
No, don't remember that. I do remember.
So they were here when I was here in 95.
I do remember a wretched device called the Eagle. Do you remember that?
That was a little before my time. That was the one with the boat engine.
It came with a choice of 2 engines of different capacities.
Yeah, one of which was something utterly ludicrous.
There was, I think, one was a 10 litre, one was a 12 litre or something. I don't, you know, it basically, they sort of brought a 440 cubic inch Keith Black Hemi and something even bigger and less suitable than that, and it barely completed a lap. Ah, the good old days.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
It's very easy to get romanticised about these things, but
those of us that were there, but actually particularly in the 80s, there was some viciously dangerous looking bolide trying desperately to scrape their sorry way into the race with with as little disrespect as possible to the people who had deluded themselves into thinking it was a good idea. Fortunately, the state of international sports car racing is in a very, very much healthier vein right now, because the cars nowadays, nothing gets on this grid that isn't absolutely spectacular in its performance, in its reliability normally, and its preparation. Away goes the 51 Ferrari of James Collado. Alex Lynn leading, but of course they're only a couple, or have been only a couple of laps out of sync.
Yep.
And for almost the entire nighttime session, that Ferrari-Aston Martin battle has changed backwards and forwards only with pit stop strategy, because they were a set of tyres out. So one would be in its first stint on tyres, the other would be on its second, and it seemed that this car, the 97 Aston, actually fared quite a lot better than the Ferrari did in that second stint. It seemed just to be less hard on its tyres early on. He's coming up behind Jan Magnussen now, Alex Lynn.
So 2 different shades of yellow, or is that green? The other storyline, of course, of the 97 is we are expecting that car may very well need a brake change. It hasn't had one. The 51 Ferrari has, the 95 Aston Martin has.
Simon Strang suggesting they're just going to get the drivers to wear slippers.
I think that's probably right.
And if they win, they'll get a matching pipe. I think he may not have had enough sleep.
I think he probably hasn't.
Aston Martin, Simon
Or
Strang.
too many of the M&Ms.
The blue ones. Oof.
Yes.
Oh dear, no. Jota have released Roberto Gonzalez into the wild. He's come back out of the pits in the number 38 car in second place. So this, there goes the Hub Auto car. Okay, so no, we saw it back on terra firma, but always when I'm looking at a timing screen, there's something going very slowly, flashes up on screen. That's a little bit of a worry, but...
I wonder if he's got just stone in the... stone that's maybe giving him a bit of a problem, because it didn't spin. First and foremost, it had a spin. Hello, I'm Emily.
You don't recognise me because I'm not wearing the mask. I didn't recognise you looking so smart, Manueli. Let's hear from who we're going to hear from, the 91 Porsche team as he comes into the pit lane. Or maybe not. Fred Macco gets out. Jimmy Bruni hoiking his race suit up as he slips into the car. So full service for the 91 car. They fixed its earlier electrical issues. And after 92 had a long and repeated set of stops for power steering very early on. The pole-sitting car also had power steering issues, didn't it? So it came in at just before 6 AM to get those fixed, and came in again. Whoa!
Well, we don't often
Sparks from the gun, or was that bits of gravel flying out? Either way, something flying off there. Look at these guys.
It's been a miserable Le Mans for the Porsche factory team. I don't think I've said those words before.
I don't think
20 years of covering this race.
Ever seen Olaf Mantei's team so underwhelming. I mean, they've had nothing but misfortune.
No pace.
That's how you puncture tyres. We talk about running over and cutting the tyre on the inside of the curb. Look at that in hypermotion. Yves, my friend, you have excelled yourself with that shot.
5-second penalty added to the next pit stops of car 54. That is the AF car 54. And also to the 95 Aston Martin. We'll come to that in a moment. Let's go and hear what's going on with Ricardo Gonzalez at Skota.
Drive time is complete. You need to look after these tires. They're going to go to Antonio. You need to look after these tires.
For a moment there, I thought he said they're going to go to the end, but they're going to go to Antonio. So single stint for Roberto Gonzalez. And we now start to think about that, Graham Goodwin, don't we? That the lesser rated drivers in the cars, your bronzes, your silvers, have a minimum drive time, and we now have to make sure that all our guys have got that done. So for instance, Racing Team Netherlands, Frits van Aert is in the car now because he didn't do any nighttime driving. Giorgio Giotto, who actually seems to have done most of the driving in Cettilar, is back in again. John Falp is in, Alex Coigny is in, so there are lots of drivers fulfilling that minimum drive time in LMP2 and in GTE AM as well.
That must have been a nice message for Roberto Gonzalez to hear.
Long as he doesn't lock up and go off into the gravel on these tyres that he's got to look after.
I was thinking that looks a bit squirrely, but 40 minutes before his time is done, and he just needs to keep it consistent, keep it quick. Second in LMP2 at the moment, 3-minute gap.
But yes and no, it's a beautiful day at Le Mans. This is what you come for. Yes, it's nice that you're in second place. Yes, it's lovely that your teammates might get a chance to battle for victory, because the 22 United car is only 90 seconds in front. But you come to Le Mans to drive. And Roberto Gonzalez here, whoa, the Hub Auto car doing 0 kph.
Did well there, actually, did very well indeed. Just to confirm, by the way, the Super Sub for Eduardo Freitas is indeed Rui Marquez. Another Portuguese race director. Another excellent one at that. In safe hands, the Le Mans 24 Hours, whilst Eduardo gets a croissant and I'd hope a little bit of shut eye.
No, double espresso and a cigarillo. That's what he exists on. He did give up smoking once. Didn't give up smoking a second time, though.
You are fast down, we know. No, mistake, take him out in. If there's one mistake, you finish. Take him out in.
Safety margin, if you make one mistake, it's finished. Wow. So, what, the charge for the podium? I mean, and again, that is still a potential. You know, Jean-Eric Verne in third is 2 laps ahead of them. But if they don't make a mistake, and G-Drive do, and Panis do, and Graf do...
It's precisely that. What they're doing is they're looking for the next target. The next target is 74 seconds up the road, and that is Vincent Capillaire. That's what they're aiming for. Keep it consistent, keep that target in mind, just chip away at that and let the rest of the cars in front worry about their own problems.
Yeah. Well, these guys nearly had a podium finish in Spa. They were battling for victory with Racing Team Netherlands. Little contact between the two of them when Frits van Aert was driving at Blanchimont, and a huge high-speed off for Thomas Laurent, and that destroyed the Cinetec chassis, so they needed one at high speed. And spoke to Philippe Signot in the aftermath of that, and he said it is not ideal for Le Mans. We have to find a new car and then rebuild it to go to Le Mans with a 3-week lead-in. Not ideal. Out of the pits comes Algarve Pro, into the pits comes Algarve Pro's John Falp. Out comes Will Owen at United Autosports. That car, long-time race leader, United for a while during the night, in fact for most of the night, on target for a 1-2, and it was just a drag-out fight between the two of them for supremacy. But as so often is the case, everybody's plans get ruined by Lady Luck. And that will have been the case also for these guys. Gustavo Menezes split the Toyotas on the grid. He is now behind the sister car of Nate Berton. Berton in the pits. The gap was 47 seconds. So it is definitely game on for best of the rest for second position. Driver change as Berton is out. And so too is Emanuele Pirot, heading off to do a little bit more of his Grand Marshal dutying. Never a bad thing when Emanuele Pirot comes in. Just as well his phone didn't go off there. I can remember standing in the paddock chatting to him several years ago, and suddenly you could hear a helicopter engine starting up and the turbine spooling and everything else. Oh, sorry, that's my phone. Always the joker.